it's Joy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am hopping along with the crew from Team Tiny for Embossing Folder Friday. You might wonder what that is. The second Friday of every month we choose a theme and use embossing folders. We all have them in our stash, and sometimes they're not very well loved on, so we have chosen to do that. I used the Spoon Daisy 3D embossing folder from altenew and I used watercolor paper by Canson XL. And I did that because I wanted to watercolor. Typically when we think of embossing, we think of using cardstock, like solid cardstock, and maybe ink blending on it, maybe adding waxes or paste or inks to them to bring out the texture, but we forget about our watercolors. And so I just want to do something a little bit different. I am not an expert watercolorist. In fact, I'm relatively new at it. I like mediums that I can control, and we all know that watercolor can be very loosey-goosey. So my compromise in this was using my Caran Brush Pro markers. And by doing that, I can go straight to the paper, or I can lay it down on my glass mat and pick it up like you do, like when you ink smush, so I can kind of control it. So what I did was take my darkest color and I applied it where the shadows would be. Now you're going to ask me, well, how do you know where the shadows are? Since this is a 3D embossing folder, you can actually hold this up to a light and tilt it, and you will see the shadows, if that helps you. So before I go into my technique, I'm going to let you know what colors I'm using. I used the Rose Pink, the Soft Peach 2, Gold, Sandstone for the stamen, Olive Green for the stem, and Cool Aqua for my background. So you're going to notice on the first two petals that I went in very conservatively with the color, and that's because I wasn't sure how dark the result was going to be. What I like about the Caran Brush Pro markers is they're highly pigmented. You can color with them like a regular marker, or you can use them for watercoloring by adding water either with an aqua brush or straight in with a brush like I am. So I am using a squirrel hair number 6 paintbrush to bring in the water with my project. So by the time I get to that third or fourth petal, you will see that I am going in strong and dark with my marker. And I am going in conservatively with the water. And the reason I say that is, one, I want my color to stay just on the embossed or the raised area of the flower and not into my background, because I am using colors that are opposite on the color wheel. So normally an orange and a blue would make mud if they were to mix. I did use a coral, so that means that there's some pink in there. So if they do mix, you'll get more of a purplish color. But the one thing that is forgiving about watercolor is if you add enough water and you blot it with a paper towel, you can sop up your mistake, sort of, and you have a little bit of time to do that until it dries. Now another tip that I have with watercolor is dry your layers, like dry in between adding more ink, whether it's actual watercolor, if it's a marker, if it's your ink pads. By heat setting your colors, you are preserving some of the layers and the little nuggets of colors, and that's very important to me because I like dimension and I like different depths of color. If you don't and you like a really messy color, then don't dry, but I think that that's important. And especially if you're going in with colors that will make mud, you absolutely need to dry it. The other thing is the more water you add and the more layers you add, you run into your paper pilling and things like that. So because I am a heavy-handed person and I typically use way too much of anything that I ever have my hands on, I like to dry, because otherwise my paper would be a sopping wet mess and would be peeled up by the end of this project. But you can tell that I went in with just a slightly damp brush the entire time. And I worked on pulling my colors and really concentrating on staying on the raised portion of my flower. And I think that's an important thing to note. Otherwise, you'll never get the effect of this spoon daisy being with such fine petals and the intricate details of it. So that's my tip and trick, is to be conservative with your water. And you're going to see here in just a second just kind of what my first layer looks like. I like it. And then I come in with my gold onto what would be like the stamen. And once I put that down, I was not thrilled with how light it was. So I went in with another layer, and I did not stay true to my word and dry in between, and that's because I wanted to add the brown between those colors. Now, I am starting on the background, and that's because I want the flower to dry and let the color do what it's going to do. So, because I didn't want my blues and my oranges to mix, I went in with clean water and I put down like a puddle where I wanted it, and then I dropped my marker down into the water and let it flow. Once it went where it wanted to go, then I could determine if I needed more water or more color. And that is just a conservative way to control your watercolor. And I think that worked there. You're going to see just then I did have to sop up some of my color because my reds went into my blues. But like I said, it's very forgiving if you still have a wet background. And then you're going to see me, I get a little bit braver in this next go round. And I go in with my marker and I just start putting it straight down because I wanted a more vibrant background. And again, I'm working in layers. And I wasn't so worried about the stem of the flower because I knew the olive green would cover the aqua. So that was no big deal. So now you're seeing where my bravery comes in, and I am just slapping down that blue marker. But again, my paper, I dried it in between. I didn't show that on camera, but I kept it still just a tad damp. And then I came in with my gold marker and I added highlights and different tones within my flower to bring it out and to bring out, the different levels of that 3D embossing folder. And then finally I went in with my olive marker and did the stem. And then for final touches, I used my PH Martin's bleed proof paint, and I splattered that and let it dry. In the meantime, I used my altenew sentiment strips sentiments and heat embossed onto a black panel, and then I die cut that with a fishtail banner from Whimsy Stamps. From there, I backed my card with foam tape, and as always, because I can't get panels straight otherwise, I put my wet glue on there before applying my panel to my card base. My front panel is trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4 so that I will have a small border around my card. And then I do pop up the sentiment on the panel and add some silver gems. So we are hopping along. If you need to find us, you will need to put in hashtag EFF4 in the search bar and you will find us. Thank you for sticking around with me and have a good one. Until next time, keep crafting. Bye bye.